a 1966 Dodge Coronet with the king of Chrysler V8s. (1966) was a big year for Dodge. This is the year that they unleashed the 426 Street Hemi engine in the Dodge and Plymouth B-body platforms, resulting in a lot of cars that surprised a lot of people on the street. Now, the 426 Hemi initially appeared as a race-only engine in the earlier 60s, and it was very, very successful in NASCAR and in drag racing, but it was a race-only engine. It was high compression, it was very temperamental, not something you want to install in your daily driver. So they wanted to sell an engine on the street that was a little more friendly to the driver, and that was the birth of the Street Hemi, which essentially was the same 426 cubic inch engine with a little bit lesser of a compression ratio. It was down to 10 1/4 from over 12 to 1, a different intake system, exhaust manifolds, slightly different camshaft profile. It was still very, very powerful. It made 425 horsepower and 490 foot-pounds of torque, but in a much more manageable package. And this engine debuted in the B-body, which is what you see here today in this 1966 Dodge Coronet 440. Now, it's a little confusing. It says it's a Coronet 440. Well, the 440 didn't mean engine size. It meant the body style. And in fact, you could get the Coronet in a 440 or a Coronet 500. Now, the word coronet isn't a very common word in U.S. spoken English. And this car is not named after the instrument that looks like a trumpet. It's named after a coronet, which was a European-style headpiece worn by dignitaries and nobles, but not necessarily kings or queens, because they wore crowns. But at any rate, if you had a Hemi-powered Coronet, you could rule the drag strip. One of the things I've always liked about these boxy mid-60s Mopars is that they installed the Hemi engine into a car that didn't necessarily look very racy. If you saw this big square box coming at you, you might not think that this has a Street Hemi under the hood backed by a 4-speed and an all-business type driveline. You might think it's just a two-door sedan coming at you, but the reality was these things surprised a lot of people. They say they're only original once, and this car is an unrestored 47,000-mile Hemi car. The condition is unbelievable, and it's been polished and tuned up a little bit here and there, but really this is how it was, and it's a favorite in the brothers' collection. So you are looking at the dark green paint job that this thing came with from the factory. All of the upholstery is original. All of the trim, everything on this car is exactly how it was when it came from the factory. So a lot of times you'd think if somebody bought a 426 4-speed Coronet, the whole purpose was to go out and beat it up and street race it and drag race it and drive it real hard, and that's why a lot of those cars don't exist anymore. But this one led a pretty pampered life, and as you can tell, it's in fantastic shape, and it's a beautiful car. They made about 250,000 1966 Dodge Coronets, but it's believed that about 200 had the 426 Hemi and the 4-speed transmission. And why does that matter? Because these go fast. And the styling on these Coronets is really pretty unique. It's a very boxy car, but it's got an aggressive look at the same time. The nose has a squared off grille with the 4 individual headlights and a vertical divider bar in the middle to kind of take a little bit of the size out. The rear of the car has a big rectangular piece of trim that surrounds the slightly angled taillights, but again, it's all very squared off and very clean mid-60s styling. One of the neater features is the roofline. This car has a very elegant rear pillar design. The rear window is laid forward almost like a fastback, but not entirely. But the profile of the side windows has a very light looking design, almost like a convertible, but not quite. And of course the car has the very long coved side panels, starting at the fenders, going down the doors, and then they bow out on the quarter panels with the classic Coke bottle shape, which kind of gives this car a forward moving appearance even when it's standing still. Another Another thing that's cool about these big Coronets is that they were useful cars. You could buy one of these and pile your whole family in the thing, put all your luggage in the trunk, and go for a cross-country drive, you know, a big family vacation if you wanted. You didn't have to sacrifice size and practicality just because you had a car that ran low 13s in the quarter mile. And speaking of performance, there was a story back in Hot Rod magazine from 1966 that showed the very first Street Hemi Coronet landed on the West Coast, and those guys at Hot Rod got a chance to play with it. And they had Doug Thorley whip up a set of headers and took it over to Dyno Don Nicholson's shop for some dyno tuning, where Nicholson found that this thing put over 300 horsepower to the wheels, which was higher than any stock engine car that they had ever tested, verifying that this thing was really going to be a high-performance machine. So the Street Hemi was a very highly anticipated engine, and today, the people that know what these cars are really look at them as something cool, and those who don't know what they are just kind of dismiss them as a boxy 60s two-door car. But we know the secret. So do you like your muscle cars subtle and sneaky, or bright and flashy with stripes and wings? Leave your comments on our Facebook page. We might even read them on our next viewer mail episode. But until then, keep your foot to the floor, and we'll see you next time on Muscle Car of the Week.